Deputy Mayor Davidson. Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Ross. Thank you. Just before we begin, could I ask you quickly, you're on to do the St. John ambulance flag raising on Friday because I have a conflict with an AMO meeting. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Welcome everyone and welcome to our council meeting for June the 23rd. We no longer get to see each other in the hallways and share conversations. So apologize. First, I wanted to ask everybody, and I see everybody is muted and appreciate that very much. And when I call on you, if you could unmute yourself and put on your microphone, that would be wonderful. I also want everyone to know that this meeting is being live streamed, and we would like you also to know that the meeting is also being audio and video recorded and shall form part of the town record. And you can get more information about the town's retention bylaw through the clerk's office. So I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening and also let everyone know that Councillor Payne and Councillor Orsatti has sent their regrets for this evening. Now we'll move on to the agenda approval and then open forum. So we've had no one on for open forum this evening. And so we'll go right to the approval of the agenda. We do have 2 additional items since the agenda was last updated. So we'd need 2/3 majority vote as per procedural bylaw to move forward with the amendments, which are 2 delegations. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Fowler, all those in favor of approval of the agenda as amended, and that is carried. Next, are there any disclosures of interest from members of the committee or members of council? My apologies. Seeing none, if one becomes apparent to you through the meeting, just please let us know. Next is item 5, presentations and petitions. And we do have a presentation, and it's from Michael Ryan, Simcoe County Food Council Coordinator, and Sarah Corcoran, Town of Innisfil, our Health Associate. So Sarah and Michael, whenever you're ready, we're looking forward to your presentation.
Sorry, I just jumped in. Were you introducing us? Apologize for that. You're on mute, but I assume that's what you were saying. My name is Michael. Sorry.
Go ahead, Michael and Sarah. Sorry.
Thanks. That's okay. So my name is Michael Ryan, and I'm one of the coordinators for the Simcoe County Food Council, along with Courtney O'Neill. Next slide, please. When talking about the Food Council, it's important to know where we've been. So its work is developed out of the Simcoe County Food and Agricultural Charter, which was created in 2013. Going along for that, the Poverty Reduction Task Force of Simcoe County was involved in some roundtables with the provincial government where food security was identified as a problem. And there was a real drive from the county in 2017 with some forums that led to ecoeconomics being retained by the county to create a food security framework. Which then in 2019 was adopted by County Council, and which is mine and Courtney's job to implement. And the Food Council, next slide, is kind of a fruition of that and comes out of the framework. So what the framework is a blueprint to further awareness and coordination to develop approaches designed to enhance food security for everyone in Simcoe County. And out of that, next slide, please. One of the necessities of doing that was the Food Council and having a group that kind of takes ownership for implementing the framework. And it's really about a constellation model. So there is a Food Council at the top and there are working tables below. So as we'll see later, there are goals within the framework, which each working table takes ownership of. That is a collaboration of groups across Simcoe County that are working towards similar goals within the framework. And as they're implementing that, they will run into challenges which are policy related, which will flow up to the Food Council, and the Food Council can be that organization that's advocating for policy changes to affect household food insecurity or community food insecurity in Simcoe County. Next slide. So the vision is a sustainable, equitable, secure local food system for Simcoe County, recognizing food as a human right, that the food system is interconnected, and that everyone in Simcoe County will have sufficient, nutritionally, culturally appropriate food that is financially and physically accessible to everyone. Next slide, please. So inside the framework, there's 7 goals that kind of address household food insecurity and community food security. So one is to raise awareness about household food insecurity in Simcoe County. 2 is supporting income and housing solutions to reduce household food insecurity, because the underlying problem of household food insecurity is poverty or insufficient financial means to access food. Number 3 is to increase physical access to enough nutritious food for all. Number 4 is to improve community food literacy. Number 5 is to improve community food infrastructure and policy to support the local agri-food sector. 6 is to foster Simcoe County's food traditions and Indigenous food knowledge and culture. And 7, support countywide collaborations towards food secure Simcoe County. Next slide, please. So out of this, the Food Council is relatively new. Last September or October, we hosted our first meeting. It's great to launch something, a new initiative in the middle of COVID where you can't meet people in person and connect people. But at the beginning of COVID, there was a recognition that food banks within Simcoe County would be someone that would be in need of help. And so the county started a support group for food banks, which has evolved into the Food Council as a working table. And it's been really interesting to watch. There's about 15 food banks across Simcoe County that join those meetings regularly once a month. And starting talking about how COVID was affecting them to broader challenges that food banks are facing, and watching different food banks support each other. Because the whole idea behind the Food Council and the working tables is to ensure that there is not replication inside the system. It's to bring people together that are working in the same space, see who's doing it well, who's facing challenges, and oftentimes we can connect people that have faced the challenges in the past. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're not duplicating, that we can learn off past successes and ensure that we're leveraging successes across the county, whether it be something that's happening in North Simcoe connecting to South Simcoe, east to west, and similar. Food literacy and food programs, there's been some discussions, and actually there's been a synergy between them and the food banks. As COVID has hit, the student nutrition program was faced with challenges in getting food into the school system. And so using food banks' existing infrastructure, there's a great success story in Orillia with a sharing place where they have actually been able to leverage the student nutrition program and feed approximately 900 students a week through that program, that the student nutrition program would have a challenge with otherwise. Obviously, the in-person versus at-home learning has affected that, but while they were in school, it was approximately 900 students a week that they were helping. The agriculture and local food systems is a working table talking a bit more about economic development and land preservation. Equity, diversity, inclusion is always an issue. As we walk through the stats, we'll see that minority and communities are affected at a higher rate. Community food gardens, Simcoe County Poverty Reduction Task Force, we are a member of. And through all this, there's often a discussion about local food assets. And as we saw the synergy between the student nutrition program and food banks, there's often an overlap. And how do we connect that? And knowing where assets are is a big important step in making sure that it's not replicated. Also, there's lots of sub-region food asset maps that are made. They sit on a shelf that governments have funded. So how do we make sure that it's a living document, and connecting people that are looking for it to it is an important step that we've heard from a lot of stakeholders. Next slide, please. You can skip to the next slide. So often inside this discussion, household food insecurity versus community food security. So one is recognizing that food is accessible in the community, that's culturally appropriate. That's community food security. But household food insecurity is the important one, because it's talking about individuals or households that lack the financial resources to access food and can be influenced by the cost of living, job security, social assistance rates, and is really a big thing that municipalities have some effect over, not all effect, but some. Next slide, please. So nationally, we see that 1 in 8 households in Canada are household food insecure, 1 in 6 children, 11% of couples, but single parent households are drastically more affected, as well as those that identify as Indigenous, Black, or 28%, 30% household food insecure. Next slide. Inside Ontario, we see a similar story. And the other thing would be is that over 60% of the people that are household food insecure are relying on wages to live on. So it's not only people that are on social assistance or out of work on hard times, it's people that are working that are affected by this also. Next slide, please. And inside Simcoe County, we see that we match the federal rate, where 1 in 8 households in Simcoe County are household food insecure. And you can see some stats here, and all these stats are in the presentation for you to review going back. Next slide. So 11.4% of Simcoe residents are living in poverty, 12% between the age of 25 and 64. And there's some stats about Simcoe County here. Recognizing that your council has a position that is funded in the area and has been working towards this. I believe the next slide we're going to turn over to Sarah.
So as we've seen, food insecurity is present across Simcoe County, and Innisfil is no exception. This has been further reinforced through the community needs assessment, which identified economic security, including the ability to access basic needs such as food, as one of the 5 priority areas. Innisfil residents shared that many people in our community are experiencing greater economic impacts as a result of COVID-19, including many who are experiencing food insecurity for the very first time. Town staff are continuing to work to address this community need by implementing health and wellness initiatives that support the recommended actions within the community needs assessment and are also in alignment with the food security framework and the town's other strategic plans. Next slide, please. The Innisfil Community Fridge, the Garden to Give, and our food skills programs are 3 examples of existing projects that are informed by the Simcoe County Food Security Framework and are in alignment with the town's priorities. The Innisfil Community Fridge aims to increase access to fresh, nutritious food while reducing the stigma associated with food insecurity. Food is donated daily by organizations, businesses, and individuals, creating an opportunity to build community. The fridge is accessible to everyone 24/7, reducing barriers to accessing emergency food. Feeding into the community fridge is the community garden, the Garden to Give. This is a pilot project which gives those who don't have garden space at home or don't have the ability to care for an entire garden on their own an opportunity to get involved with gardening. Food grown in the garden is donated back to the community through the fridge. Finally, food skills programs such as the Seniors Good Food Box and What's Cooking Innisfil offer a dignified way to access food while also improving food literacy. Next slide, please. These 3 initiatives are in alignment with many of the town's strategic plans, highlighting how existing priorities and projects are already aligned with the food security framework. Specifically, the economic security pillar of the community needs assessment, enabling health and wellness as outlined within the Innovative Innisfil 2030, and several objectives within Our Health, including promoting food security and access, improving health equity, and implementing health and wellness programming. While the town already has policies and programs that are in alignment with the food security framework, it's important that we continue our efforts to support food security in our community. Next slide, please. Recognizing the complexity of household and community food security, there's a space for action at the municipal level. Through the recent approval of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, Council has already shown their commitment to better understand and begin to work on addressing how poverty, income disparity, housing, and employment affect the community. This is a key step towards addressing the root cause of food insecurity. Further actions that can be taken include knowing and leveraging existing community food assets and looking at municipal policies and programs that help reduce poverty, like affordable housing, transit, and active transportation, as well as supporting employment, training, and entrepreneurship. Next slide, please.
And really our goal here today is to raise awareness about the household food insecurity, but also about the Simcoe County Food Council. We're a new organization that is just getting our feet on the ground. And coming here today was really about raising awareness about who we are and what our goals and priorities are. Some of the ways that the municipality can support the framework is by endorsing the Simcoe County's food security framework, acknowledging that household food insecurity is a priority and a problem, and that municipalities have a role to play supporting existing food assets within your community, and identifying someone, a point person within the municipality to work with the food council should we have any issues. And I think your funding the position with Sarah is a good step towards that, and I really commend you for that. Next slide, please. These are some of the 15 members that have joined the Food Council since its beginning. And there's many more members on some of the working tables we're working towards. And I'd really like to thank you for your time tonight. And thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Michael and Sarah. Very, very educational. Can I ask members of council if they have any questions or comments? I think that I see on this list of individuals, there's lots of farmers on that list that have joined your Food Security Council.
Yeah, there are a few, along with many other organizations across the county that are working towards household food insecurity and goals towards it, yes.
And did I see some members of the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit on there as well?
Yes, Christine Bushy, that's in charge of the Chronic Disease Prevention Unit, has been a member and was part of the working table that helped draft how the framework would be implemented. Yeah.
So I was interviewed by them, and they had this program called No Money for Food is Senseless. And so does that dovetail into this work?
That's very much, it very much dovetails. So our first goal, raising awareness about household food insecurity, and the second goal of improving income solutions, right? Because basically household food insecurity is a financial problem. So one of the big things about the Food Council is not replicating how do we leverage success, and the No Money for Food is Senseless campaign is definitely something that we want to leverage and work with the health unit how to promote it. And it is definitely something that's on our radar, along with our work with the PRTG, which is definitely working towards those same goals.
Thank you, Councillor Waters and Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. I want to thank the two of you for your presentation. It was really great. I just thought there was a wonderful opportunity. It seems that we're playing catch up in terms of the urban context that we have in Innisfil, that we're playing catch up and we're trying to improve things. And there's an opportunity with the Orbit to help build these type of important assets into a new community. So I just wanted to make a statement that it would be advantageous, I think, for this group, people like yourselves, to be working with Tim Kane, who's in charge of the Orbit, to ensure those types of opportunities get built into the community in terms of local gardens, local agricultural opportunities, and healthy food options for those people in the Orbit, but also outside the Orbit. But I just thought it's, as opposed to playing catch up and building things into existing communities, it would be really nice to see how well we could build these into future neighborhoods and communities and get our foot in the right place at the right time. So I just wanted to make that point, that put a bug in Tim's ear to maybe touch base with both of you in terms of future opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Through you, thank you. I appreciate your presentation. Just want to point out a concern that I have. I know of two particular families that depend on the food bank for their food, but they have no mode of transportation. And I'm not patting myself on the back, don't get it wrong, but they actually use my vehicle a couple of times a month to go and get their box of food. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we can reach out to these people with a delivery service. And somebody would say, well, use Uber to go get your box. Uber was charging them $40 to go get a box of food. So it really defeats the purpose. So I think in this program, we have to look at a possible type of maybe where the town could assist with an Uber delivery to these people, or free to pick up to the food bank to get your box of food, because it is a concern, especially when you live on the outskirts of Innisfil.
And that's definitely been a discussion at different food banks at the beginning of COVID when they weren't allowing people inside. There was a real move towards that. We saw in one of the food banks had paid for a pizza delivery app that was able to schedule deliveries, that they had a volunteer that was able to deliver, and this app was helping them schedule the best route. We've seen other food banks that when we talk about leveraging assets across the county, the St. Vincent de Paul is an organization that sits at the food bank's working table. And one of the food banks to the south of you, they're actually using the St. Vincent de Paul. There's volunteers through them that are willing to, when they run into people that can't access the food bank, like your example, that don't have transportation, they contact or reach out to another organization like the St. Vincent de Paul, and those volunteers will come and make the delivery for them. It's all about serving members with dignity, but often when we're doing this, we've also got to recognize that transportation is a big issue, and that's something that municipalities have a control of if they have a transit system, is how one of the things, or planning a development, is how do we make sure that things are close for those that don't have access to transportation that we take for granted.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Our on-transit system does have, I believe, the food bank as one of our hubs. And also, I think there was a program we did have where they got a free trip to the food bank with Innisfil Transit. Mr. Kane, can you provide some more details?
Through your worship and through to Deputy Mayor Davison, that is correct. The Fair Transit program is in place to help people access those much needed services in the community, as well as further subsidies that were offered during the pandemic. So Deputy Mayor, I've asked Paul Pentakainen, our transit guru, to reach out to you so he can pass that information along to your residents.
Yeah, because they shouldn't have been able to get a free trip via Uber, not a $40 trip. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I just had two more. One of them was, have you heard of a program called the Second Harvest? And is it something that can help?
It's definitely something that we're looking into. Courtney would be more the one that spearheads those connections, and so I apologize, but I'll have to follow up with you. Yeah.
No trouble. And then finally, our this council and actually Simcoe County both have just adopted a new community safety and well-being plan. And I wondered if through trying to think of the name, Carrie Warner, the consultant, is because this is what this is all about, right? It's this proactive approach of keeping people out of poverty, making sure people have what they need in order to save trouble down the line.
And definitely a compliment that she reached out to us, and we had a discussion last fall or early in the year with her about some of the issues the Food Council was seeing at that time, and definitely was some input into what municipalities were drafting in those plans. And I really commend for that reaching out.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I just wanted to also add, looping back to that mention of being able to access the food bank in terms of actually getting there. We are always evaluating our programs and services to make them accessible for all, this being a big piece of health equity and bringing the services to those who need them most. So while, as Mr. Kane mentioned, there is the Innisfil Transit system to access the food bank, this is something that we're always revisiting. ways to make accessing food more equitable.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Mr. Kane, did you have another comment? No. Okay.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just got to turn my camera off.
No trouble. Excuse me. Seeing no other questions or comments, I'd ask for a mover, excuse me, and a seconder to the presentation regarding raising awareness. You can read it because I'm going to have to cough some more. Moved by Councillor Van Berkel and seconded by Councillor Nicol. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Sarah, I understand that you filmed our very own Councillor Waters making his very special vegetable lasagna. That's great. Wonderful to see. Thank you. All right. So we have one more delegation, and it's Ms. Schindrick and oh, sorry. My apologies. Two more delegations, and the first one is Ms. Sinclair. Sorry about that. Ms. Sinclair, you're up first.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I don't know why I'm so dark here. Sorry, I'll try to fix that.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I didn't think I'd be up so quickly. Yes, Mayor Lynn Dolan and members of council, we're here today to talk about the changes to the fireworks bylaw. I live here in Belle-Yorte on 17 acres, and we are surrounded by houses on all sides. I live here with my husband, Neil, and Neil is the type of neighbor everybody wants. Always fixing things for our neighbors in his shop. During the winter and a bad snowstorm, he's out on his skid steer clearing piles of snow from the neighbor's driveway. He's removing debris from the creek that flows into Lake Simcoe so that we don't have flooding. He's a great neighbor to have. We have a small hayfield that Bruce, a farmer friend, comes every year to cut to feed his cows. And on the other side of our property, we have Tigger the pony and Indy the horse. We have Katie and Sooner, our two dogs, and we have a few chickens. We have foxes, skunks, raccoons, rabbits, birds, many, many birds. The sounds in the morning of the birds are intoxicating. They make you feel grateful to be alive. We used to have deers. I used to see them in the hayfield. Now in the winter, I do see some deer tracks when I'm out feeding the horses. Sounds peaceful, doesn't it? It's a great place to live. But what we also have is a fireworks problem. I've lost count to the number of times I hear fireworks when they're not allowed. The times are too numerous to mention. It would seem some residents are getting smarter and only shooting off a few so they don't get caught. Just last week, I heard them in the middle of the afternoon. Now, it is one thing to expect them, such as on Victoria Day, and let me get back to that. It's another when they're unexpected. Things can go wrong, terribly wrong. For example, what if I was out riding my horse that afternoon and you got spooked at the unexpected fireworks going off? I could be out feeding my horses in the evening only to have them startled by the sudden sounds of fireworks and run me over by accident. My dogs are outside and get frightened and run out onto the road. Or I'm sleeping because I have to get up at 5 a.m. for work the next day. The list goes on. Part of the problem is that you can buy fireworks at any time of the year in the town of Innisfil. Many municipalities have banned this practice and even fined store owners who sell them when they are not allowed. The usual practice is 7 days before the holiday. Please see under General Provisions, Section 4.5 of the Shelburne bylaw. This is one change we can make here today. The other change is 5 days is too long. It should only be the day of the holiday. Why do you need to celebrate before and after? It doesn't make sense. I agree with Councillor Isis on this matter. The Shelburne bylaw makes mention of this as well. Please see authorized days and times, section 3.1 of the Shelburne bylaw, although they passed 1 day before and 1 day after the holiday. Please also see under general provisions, section 4.1, No person shall use fireworks in a manner that might create a danger or nuisance to any person or property. My farrier was recently out to trim my horse's hooves, so I'm talking to her about the firework issues in our neighborhood, making small talk. She comments, "We only buy silent fireworks." I replied, "You can buy silent fireworks? I didn't even know such a thing existed. What a great idea." One of my horses has been living here for 7 years, has gotten somewhat used to the sounds of fireworks. But my pony Tigger has been here for 4 years. At first, he would run around in a panic at the sounds. On one occasion, a neighbor was setting off fireworks right over my horse's paddocks. They were in such a panic, I had to run over to the neighbor and insist that he stop immediately before something terrible happened. You can see in the video that Tigger, my pony, is pacing. He is waiting for the next big bang. This is after 4 years of hearing fireworks, and they won't eat during this time. The video was taken at 9:30 p.m. We have heard fireworks go off as late as 11:30 p.m. Innisville can be a compassionate leader by educating the public on why silent fireworks should be used. Sleeping children could sleep. Adults that must get up in the morning for work the next day won't be tired. Wildlife, pets, livestock would not be traumatized by the loud sounds of fireworks. Let us be kind and considerate to all living things. Members of council, the last point I want to make is we all know how difficult the bylaw can be to enforce. Has anyone been fined for using fireworks on unauthorized days? At one time, I called bylaw with the address of someone shooting off fireworks on Barrie Avenue. What happens afterwards? I don't know. If the residents are not held accountable, nothing will change. What I suggest is better education on the effects fireworks have on people's pets, livestock, and wildlife. I think we all know what they are. I have attached a PDF document titled "The Devastating Impact of Fireworks on the environment" for your consideration. Increased fines, independent citizen videos allowed to be used to find the perpetrators, bylaw officers out in the community on weekends during the summer months. These are just a few suggestions. That ends my presentation. Mayor Dolan and members of council, I would like to thank you for your time and your consideration on this matter.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sinclair. Is there any questions of Ms. Sinclair at this time? Seeing none, we will have a motion to receive your delegation, and I will let you know that it is one of the later things on the agenda this evening, but you're more than welcome with your camera off to stay on this feed, or you can leave and watch it on YouTube, whatever suits you, if you wanted to stay and hear the debate that we'll have later on this item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So could I have a mover and a seconder, please, for the to receive this? Councillor Ices and Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That is carried. Next, we have Cheryl Shindrick and John Janae representing Friday Harbor. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council, town staff, and ladies and gentlemen joining us online this evening. My name is Cheryl Shindrick, and I'm here representing Friday Harbor Partnership. And as the mayor said, I'm joined by Mr. John Janae of Malone Given Parsons. We are here this evening to speak in support of item C3 in your agenda package and the recommendations set out in staff report DSR 090-21 regarding the proposed zoning amendment for Friday Harbor. I would note just for the record that the applicant is Friday Harbor Village Inc., whereas the report has inadvertently referenced the Friday Harbor Resort Association. I do understand that staff are going to speak to this later on in your meeting. This application will enable the continued evolution of Friday Harbor and the continued delivery of economic benefits to the town. Even in these still uncertain times, the Friday Harbor Partnership, under the leadership of the managing partner, Jim DeGasperis, is committing to and delivering new major amenities at the resort. The Lake Club at the west end of the boardwalk is in the final stages of completion. The amphitheater at the pier is also nearing completion, the modular structures having been installed this past week, and the beautiful tensile structures scheduled to be installed in the coming weeks. And a new resort administration center is under construction at the top of Sunreef Avenue. These taken together represent a further $60 million investment in the town. At the same time, new shops are opening in the second phase of retail at the west end of the boardwalk. Feather and Stone ladies apparel and accessories being one of the most recent ones to open, and coming very soon is Ren Sushi, among others. We look forward to presenting these new resort amenities and retail opportunities to homeowners and visitors alike at Friday Harbor this summer. Your worship and members of council, I want to thank you and your staff on behalf of the Friday Harbor Partnership and the entire Friday Harbor team for your leadership and the visionary approach you are taking to community building. One just needs to look through your agenda or look around town as evidence of your great work and many accomplishments. Friday Harbor is very proud to be part of this community and to contribute to Innisfil's success. In closing, I want to thank staff for their work on this application and for their report and the recommendations that are before you this evening. And we would ask for council's support of those recommendations. With all of that, Madam Mayor, that concludes my remarks, and Mr. Janay and I would be pleased to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I respect the presentation so far tonight. Hopefully we'll be able to deal with this later in committee of the whole. So I do thank you for appearing tonight. My questions will come forward then, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I have one. When I read the staff report, it talks about I remember, I believe it was Mr. Janay showing the eye-level view from West Street going towards the building where the hotel would be. And the report said that there had been some changes in those grade drawings. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Through further review, after reviewing the comments coming forward at the public meeting, we realized that we'd been misled essentially by Google Earth on the topography between West Street and Friday Harbor. And with benefit of the county's 2-meter contour mapping, we recognized the discrepancy and revised the drawing to better reflect the understanding of where the ground is versus the tops of trees. So the revised cross sections now show a more level ground situation, but that the view lines continue to be essentially blocked by the tree growth, the forest growth between West Avenue and the site.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I want to thank you both for being here. I'm sure that we'll get to that item in due course. So again, if you want to watch on YouTube, or if you just want to turn your videos off and stay on this Zoom meeting, that's totally up to you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So mover and a seconder, please, to receive the delegation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Davidson, seconded by Councillor Waters. All those in favor? And that is carried. Next is County Council Municipal Association updates. Let's start with our EOC update because I usually forget them. Mr. Keogh.
Good evening, Your Worship. Can everyone see and hear me okay? Just some odd things on my end. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Deputy Mayor Davidson, members of council, pleased to bring you this update tonight. First off, from our partners at the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, there have been 9 new cases reported to health unit for the current week. There were 67 new cases reported to the health unit last week, so the week of June 13th. That is 31% lower than the 97 cases reported for the week of June the 6th. So you can follow that bouncing ball a bit. So last week, the week of June 13th, was the lowest weekly case total since September. Regarding vaccines, research from the United Kingdom shows current vaccines provide very good protection against the Delta variant, even with 1 dose. 63.8% of the total population in our region has 1 dose, and 18.7% of our population is fully vaccinated. New information posted on the SMDHE website about vaccines. It talks about the social determinants of health. It shows that areas with higher material deprivation, poor areas, and ethnocultural diversity areas have reduced immunization coverage. The timing for the AstraZeneca vaccine's 2nd dose has been reduced to 8 weeks. As we are all aware, the province is allowing for interchangeability of mRNA vaccines. So vaccine interchangeability has been a common practice for other infectious diseases for many years. As of today, individuals who received their 1st dose of an mRNA vaccine on or before May 30th and who live in the catchment area of one of the 10 public health units identified as Delta hotspots in our region is one of those. Those individuals will be eligible to book or rebook their 2nd dose appointment at a shortened interval. As for reopening, the province is on track to move to step 2 of its reopening on July the 2nd. They are advising that we still, of course, need to be vigilant, to take it slow with gatherings, as there is still a risk. Guidance on step 2 and 3 will come once regulations are available. We do not have guidance yet for fully vaccinated individuals, so they are still asked to continue to adhere to public health measures. As for our parks, as we enter summer, starting June 28th, parking at our lots becomes resident only. There will be signage posted at entrances to the town. For the weekend of June 12th and 13th, we did see quieter attendance, relatively speaking, at our parks. At Innisfil Beach Park, 2,171 resident vehicles were allowed to enter, while 518 non-resident vehicles were turned away. We did see some congestion at our boat launch area, so vehicles who are not launching boats will no longer be permitted to sit in that area. So we should see some congestion go away there, we hope. The T-zone pilot that was piloted at Beach 3 has ended, and Beach 3 is once again under a Beaches in Motion model as recommended by the EOC. For operations and programs, baseball started last week, with field lacrosse starting this week and soccer in July. Operations have also begun a sanitization station pilot at our IRC sports fields. We are meeting with the SMDHU and other Simcoe rec staff to review and interpret summer camp guidelines. For our enforcement effort, call volumes are decreasing across the board, and we are planning for Canada Day enforcement measures and, of course, getting ready if there is an early move into step 2 prior to July the 2nd. Our customer service team reports that they are receiving a high volume of calls coming in. There are some delays in call wait times as a result, though I understand they're still under 2 minutes, which is still pretty good. And there are lots of appointments for parking passes being booked. And that's everything.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Any questions? Seeing none, yeah, I think with the record volumes that customer service has been getting, still being able to keep it to 2 minutes. I joked at the EOC saying if anybody thought that was long, they hadn't called Bell or Rogers lately. So thank you so much, Johnny, for that. Anyone else have any updates from any of the committees that they serve on for the betterment of Innisfil? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Just from County Council this week. We're starting to move into budget deliberations. So we're working hard to try and keep to 2%, let's say, increase. But if we can reduce that, I think there's a feeling to do our best to reduce the 2% increase on taxpayers, as this pandemic will linger on longer than we expect. Not so much for receiving the vaccine, but just the repercussions from so many people being, businesses being closed and people out of work. So we will do our best to remember that not everybody had a job during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other updates? Seeing none, we'll move on to our consent list then for the evening. It's a chock-a-block agenda, so hopefully we'll get through it all. As usual, if you agree with the staff recommendation, then and it's not pulled, then it'll be ratified at the end of the meeting. If you just have a question or a quick comment, that's fine. But if we're going to have debate, then the best thing to do is to pull it, and we'll deal with it in committee of the whole, where we'll have a fulsome debate on it. So the first item is A1, the adoption of the meeting minutes from May the 19th. That was a special council meeting. A2, the special council meeting minutes from June 2nd. A3, the council meeting minutes from June 2nd. A4, the special council meeting minutes from June 16th. B1, the Innisfil Audit Advisory Committee. B2, the Innisfil Heritage Advisory Committee. B3, the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Mayor Dolan, Bill Van Berkel.
Sorry, Councilor Van Berkel.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just had a question on the heritage. The non-designated properties that are added to the heritage list, are the owners made aware of that?
I'm going to ask, is Mr. Jacob on the call? Or is there someone who could respond to that?
Hi, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Van Berkel. Yes, the property owners were made aware that the Heritage Committee were considering making a recommendation to Council, and they were invited to attend the Heritage Committee meeting on June the 3rd. And they will be advised depending on the decision tonight as well, too.
Thank you. I just wondered because a lot of them are in my ward and haven't had any phone calls.
Yeah, they've all been advised.
And Mr. Jacob, just to be clear about what it means, what's the difference between the list, the registration, and designation?
So what this is what the committee is requesting Council is to add them to the Municipal Heritage Register as a listed property or a non-designated property. And as a listed property, the heritage provisions under section 27 under the Ontario Heritage Act is that the property owner must provide 60 days notice of intentions to demolish the property. So if they if a property is a listed property on the Municipal Heritage Registry, they have to provide the town 60 days notice if they're going to apply for a demolition permit, and there is no further provisions provided on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Is that good, Councilor Van Berkel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah.
All right, so the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee. B4, the School Zone Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, I don't need to post. I'm just interested in the report there and curious about the upcoming public meeting on a possible new school in Lefroy and what the impact will be to Cloudy Beach School as well. So obviously members on the committee would know that, but I'm looking forward to seeing what that public meeting is in the future.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I'm glad to see this come forward. As you know, there's been quite an increase in traffic in the Big Bay Point area recently. So listening to the constituents in the area, and unfortunately, Councillor Payne's not here tonight, but yeah, it's nice to see a slowdown. I think we'll have to have some enforcement to get it abided to. And I think the Guest Road location is excellent. there's many times that I come around Big Bay Point Guest Road. We actually call that the 2-mile turn, where I'm being passed. And it's usually by kind of a nice car that can go pretty fast. So I'm glad to see this come, and with some enhanced enforcement when after the signs go up, I think it'll help the community a lot. And I do want to just add to it quickly that I see there in our master capital projects, there's some enhancements to be done to that road as well. So I'm glad to see that come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you've got some residents who came out and did a deputation to the School Zone and Traffic Safety Committee, so you can thank them. Next is the C1, the Mobility Orbit update. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. I just have a question regarding an item on page 8, the direct energy system.
So I think we'll refer that one because I think there'll be some more discussions on that one, if that's okay.
Perfectly fine.
So item C2, the Friday Harbor Resort Association. Deputy Mayor Davidson, referring to committee.
Committee, please. Thank you.
C3, the 2020 consolidated financial statements. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I don't need to pull it. I just wanted to maybe recognize that those documents, you know, as a council, we go through the budgeting process, and then we have a pandemic, and these wonderful people in our staff get to look after that, and they just did such a great job. You know, to see, I know it's a one town, one team effort, but you know, when our revenues are $13 million off budget, and there's just wild swings in there, and I think it'll be one for the history books.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. I certainly hope so. It's not one we repeat anytime soon. I also wanted to comment on the audit committee, of course, went through this line by line, but I want to comment how pleased the auditors were with our staff, and they were full of compliments to Treasurer Webb and all of the staff in finance. We were the very first audit that they had completed. So, and that is, you know, something to say, especially during a pandemic when it makes it more difficult to complete an audit. So wonderful work. Thank you, Councillor Ices. Next is C4, the stop sign bylaw consolidation. Again, lots of work by Ms. Cotillo. That's quite a document. C5, the Stroud Curling Club chiller, brine pump, and tank replacement. C6, the Sleeping Lions servicing allocation and request to lift the holding provision. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Because I just got a phone call and from Mr. Volbreg, and he wanted to make sure that his comments were given over to all the councillors and that they know that he's objecting to it. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Item C7, the Innis Village subdivision, parallel control. C8, lifting the hold provision for 27 Wellington Street. C9, the merge on title at Cedarville Drive. C10, bicycle helmets on town parks. Just a comment that maybe if it looks like this is going to pass, that we do some communication, some proactive communication on that piece. C11, that is this speed limit signage changes that the Deputy Mayor was referring to earlier. C12, the Sandy Cove sheds. Okay, so anybody who's on here watching from Sandy Cove, because I know we had quite an audience at the public meeting last week, if it's not pulled, that means that it would go through later on this evening, and that There was some changes made to the size. I think it went from 20 meters to 15 meters and also from 4 meters to 3 meters. So, and that'll be available on the website if you're interested. C13, the Big Bay Point Road End Improvement. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment. I'm glad to see the revised drawings and that certain areas of the road end will be left as they are. My only concern is that we do have a lot of ice fishermen in the winter that tend to drive down that hill embankment onto the lake. When I looked at the picture, it says something about stones, but I just hope they're big enough because these guys are good at moving them during the night with the front plows on their truck to drive through there. And that would do a lot of damage to the money that's being spent. And my other little concern is that when the ice comes in the spring there, this spring I was down there and the ice does a lot of damage to the shoreline. I just hope we have some money in reserves there to sort of fix that up every spring. Other than that, I'm glad to see us go ahead with the no parking in that area and hopefully it's enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that Meredith was unable to attend tonight. I wonder if Mr. Deloitte would have any comments.
Yes, yes, Your Worship. We're pleased to present this report, and we are mindful of the ice conditions, and we have built a contingency into this budget request, and we are able to ensure that this will be done in a very thoughtful and permanent way. And I should mention while I'm speaking that we have added $50,000 worth of storm water works into this project. So that's pushed the project cost up a little bit, but I'm quite confident to get underway with this road end project. We have quite a few more in the queue and it'd be great to get this one going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deloitte. Next is items D, staff reports for information, the 2020 Development Charges Act statement, the summer parking update, the provincial consultation on municipal code of conduct. So if you saw in the report, it's asking each member to go in and make comment and fill out that survey. If you would, please, that'd be great. The Lefroy Community Center water main servicing and amending the COVID-19 bylaws. All right, next is E, bylaws. There's none received. So finally is correspondence for action, council discretionary fund request from St. Pete's. And correspondence for information, a nice letter from Dr. Gardner thanking us for all of our hard work in the pandemic. The Township of Huron-Kinloss. And I'm going to ask that one to be pulled if we could, please. And then several proclamations: National Drowning Prevention Week, Municipal Pride Month, St. John's Ambulance Week, which the Deputy Mayor is going to help with the flag on Friday, and the Fiart Simcoe Pride. Seeing no more, then that is the end of the consent list. So the recommendation that items C1, C2, and G2 be referred to Committee of the Whole, and any other items be considered passed. And that is moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Deputy Mayor Davidson. All those in favor? That is carried. Now we will resolve into Committee of the Whole, and that's moved by Councillor Van Berkel and seconded by Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. And we'll move to our first item, which I believe was the orbit, C1. And Councillor Fowler, unless you have an amended recommendation, if you would move and ask for a seconder.
No amendment at this moment in time, Your Worship, but if I can have a seconder, be appreciated, I guess.
Councillor Nicol.
Okay. Thank you. I was reading the report and I came across the direct energy systems and on page 8, and I just want to get some clarification on the matter in a more technical sense. Now, are we talking, now I understand the concept of the idea. You have a central heating source and it radiates out through the buildings. Now, are we talking each building in a closed loop system that gets it transferred at a focal point? Or are we talking something, is the system all interconnected into one large system? That's what I'm looking to clarify.
Mr. Kane?
Through your worship to Councillor Fowler, it's a central closed system. So the idea, think about electricity. Instead of pushing electricity, we're pushing out thermal energy. So either heat or cooling, depending on the season. That gets pushed into the buildings, heats up the heat exchangers in there, and then the cooled, after, if we're sending heat, for example, once the heat has been taken out of that, then it's returned through a return pipe back to that central heating system to be reheated again and circulated back in a continuous way.
Okay, as a follow-up, if I may,
Yes.
are we talking in a serial pattern or is it parallel? I'm just curious because if it goes from the first building to the second to the third, obviously the first building will get the greatest reward from this. But if it's parallel, then it equally distributes it through the region.
Through your worship to Councillor Fowler, a good question. And the detailed design will take that into account. Obviously, the thermal loads of each building are going to be understood, and then where there is a secondary loop, if you want to call that, to meet those energy supplies, to avoid having those. If we're talking about heat again, to avoid having those cold spots. But that would come out in the detailed design. Essentially, what you will see is a series of 4 pipes running through the orbit concept. 2 of those pipes will be for cooling, one for the really cold energy being sent out and the warmer cold energy being sent back. And similarly on the heat side, 1 pipe for the really hot water going out and the cooler hot water coming back, not to overuse the technical terms there, but it will be a 4 pipe system. And its distribution and its detailed design will take into account that thermal loading to make sure that that's an even distribution for all the buildings.
I got one more question, and then I'll be.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. You talked as well about taking the residual heat, the thermal energy from the wastewater treatment plant. I really like that idea. I think it's good because it reduces the overall cost. And if I'm correct, is this not taking down the temperature as it goes of the water as it goes into Lake Simcoe, cooling it even further, so there's less disruption to the environment?
Mr. Kane?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Fowler. Yes, very insightful. Yeah, when we saw the location of orbit and thought about the concept of district energy in terms of embedding that early on, with the type of population that's going there, the location of the wastewater treatment plant and even the lake, if we look at the cooling side, are huge advantages. So yes, as I mentioned tonight at the board meeting for InPower and InServices, is that the current plant expansion, the phase 4 expansion, is being designed so that we can siphon off that treated effluent, steal the heat from it, and potentially up to 30% of the heat could come from that wastewater, which helps power the district energy system. And to your point, Councillor, goes to reduce the heat energy being released into the lake. So definitely a win-win and an exciting opportunity that we want to explore further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
On the same topic and being led by Councillor Fowler is on the heating system. I also read that that the systems that we're considering for heat, we're still considering carbon-based systems. Now, that's why I asked earlier whether or not we were using biogas from the sewage treatment plant, because it is a carbon-based system, but it's a renewable gas, which is a good idea. So my question is, why are we considering carbon-based fuels when your first choice, I would think, would be a geothermal system that you can do right now because you can build over top of them and that kind of stuff. So I just want to know, in terms of priority, what heating systems have the highest priority and those lower down. Thank you.
Mr. King.
Through your worship to Councillor Waters. Yes, Councillor, the first stage, time, I'm not going to say time is our enemy, but, given the timing of it and still the early phases of alternative fuels, what the first phase is going to look at, in order for us to be advancing towards occupation by 2024, those buildings, we need to have a short-term solution in place. So that short-term solution, is still not completely carbon intensive. Yes, natural gas will form part of that package, along with the waste heat from the plant. And as I understand it, some early geothermal as well. So there'll be 3 fuel systems as part of that first phase. And then what will happen is, and what we're considering into the staging of the system is that, as those new alternative fuels, not necessarily become mainstream, but certainly become more achievable, and the price of carbon starts increasing as well to make them more affordable, is that those existing carbon sources will be taken offline and be kept there for redundancy and for backup if and when we ever need them. So the idea is, yes, we're starting off a little more carbon intensive than we'd like to, but still better than status quo, and then gradually phasing those out and leaving them on standby for redundancy if we ever need them once those renewable systems come online.
Councillor Waters?
Follow up. I wouldn't call ground source geothermal systems new systems. They're used on a regular basis all around North America and in Ontario, and so they're common practice in heating systems. So I'm not too sure why we wouldn't do that as opposed to choose natural gas up front. Natural gas is a clean fuel, don't get me wrong, but it's still a carbon-based fuel.
Yes, Councillor, through your worship, sorry, to Councillor Waters. Yes, we hear you loud and clear. I'm not sure, if geothermal can provide all that load initially, but certainly, I've heard your comments and we'll certainly factor that in. Obviously, Orbit and myself are not huge fans of carbon intensive energy sources. So, the earlier that we can phase those out, the better.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I was quite impressed with the report. It started to feel real to me when I read this, if that makes any sense at all. I loved the insightful city piece, and I loved the part about, it's about the end user, right? So it's yes, it's great that we're using all this technology, but really it's, at the end of the day, it's about making people's lives easier. And I think that's, as long as we focus on that, we're going to have great success. So thank you, Mr. King. So I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that's on the table, which has basically 3 different directions that staff are asking to do. One of them is to, I think, which is really important, is to send the principles, adopt the principles of the sustainability checklist and make sure that the minister is aware of them. Certainly we can't make the minister do anything, but I think it's important for him to understand where we're going. Councillor Waters?
Just a quick question on that exact point. Your worship, is that do we have some concern that that the minister is not going to follow our recommendations and need for the clarification? I agree we need it, and I think it needs to be built in. So I'm fully supportive of it. But do we have a concern in the background that there's an issue here?
I don't, Mr. King.
Through your worship, to Councillor Waters, this is more or less a belt and suspender type provision. As Mayor Dolan pointed out, as this gets more real, and believe me, it doesn't feel more real to anyone but me right now. We're just seeing things that we can do to strengthen and make it even more clear as part of that MZO request, just to add in references in there. In this case, we found, there's specific language in our official plan, not to get too technical, but what this is trying to do is to tie the MZO to our official plan policies and make it more implementable moving forward. So yeah, obviously it's up to the minister himself what he includes and doesn't include, but we feel this language will be helpful to keep pushing that sustainability principle of the vision.
Thank you. I could add, I just want to say it's important for us to make sure we're very clear with them of what we're looking for, and I think this is helping them help us, if that makes any sense. But of course, we always have to keep in mind that the minister may choose to do nothing. So it's his decision. But I was really glad in the last cabinet shuffle that there were no changes in the municipal Affairs and Housing, because I'd hate to have to start from scratch and brief a new minister. But no, we're very fortunate to have Minister Clark stay in his portfolio. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor of the recommendation? Are there any opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next was item C2, Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Fowler, thank you. Okay, I did read this report over several times, and I have been in conversations with Friday Harbor, and I've been in conversations with the residents, and I've been listening quite carefully to the concerns of our residents. And I also reached out to our deputy clerk today regarding capital projects for Big Bay Point that might help some of the residents better understand what enhancements will be done. Now, I understand these buildings. I'm going to get clarification first. I remember this hotel in the very beginning being in close to the position where it's being asked to go back to now. And if I recall, it was 6 stories back then, and it's going to remain 6 stories now. And that your comment earlier that Google in the elevation of the land, there's been a correction made. And in my clarification, I understand that the architectural design has not been completed yet. And those, I'd like to start there with the clarification on those points, please.
Ms. Nordstrom.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Davidson. Yes, so for the hotel, you are correct. It is in a very similar location to where it was originally approved on the east side of the marina, and it is moving back there with the same height, 4 to 6 story height permission. That is not changing. We do not have a concurrent site plan application that has come in with the hotel, as there isn't a hotel operator as of yet. That will go through a site plan process, very similar to the concurrent site plan that's happening with the Sunseeker building, to ensure that it meets those architectural built form parameters set in the bylaw and through the secondary plan policies.
Thank you. Follow up, Your Worship?
Go ahead.
I've got a few questions here. I just want to go through it. And so the Sunseeker is an increase in height. Is that correct?
Mary?
Your Worship, it is in the location of the Sunseeker is in the previous location for the hotel where a 4 to 6 story built form was established through the hotel permission. And so the Sunseeker is a request to go from that generally 4 story limit that's set in the zoning bylaw to a 6 story built form.
And a follow-up clarification, Your Worship, is that the seniors residence, the resident that is going to be built north of the operations center, that is an increase of 1 floor. It's 5 floors high, but there's been no architectural design yet to confirm that height. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, yes. So the building to the north of the proposed relocated hotel would be 5 stories and would need to go through a site plan process as well.
Okay, so that's my clarifications, Your Worship. My questions are, and these are from the community that I've heard, the berm that is currently on Big Bay Point Road that runs from Friday Harbor Way to Sunreef Avenue. It's in poor shape. It works well for a section from May till October, but I think the community would really be impressed if there was some enhancement to that berm of coniferous or evergreen trees that would block the visual aspect of Friday Harbor. Originally, when Friday Harbor was proposed, there was that as it moved north towards Big Bay Point Road, it would blend in with the community. And seeing the new operations center, that's not blending in with the community. So I think that berm needs some enhancement. Nothing's been done for the last few years, and I know it's going through growing pains and adjustments, but I think that would be a benefit to the community, along with the capital projects for Big Bay Point Road, which are RDS 356, 236, 213, and 241. That all would bring that package together quite nicely to keep that rural aspect as you're going along Big Bay Point Road and blend in better with the community. And that's one of my concerns that's been brought forward at the berm enhancement. And currently there's a young gentleman from Friday Harbor that was in to see me. He's a resident there and he's doing his thesis on environment through, I think it's London University. And we do have dark sky lighting. I remember passing my first bylaw back in the dark ages when I first began. But there's also, as we're going higher up, a concern is this is a huge migratory path. And nowadays there are windows, glass windows that can be installed that stop reflection, which actually impacts a lot of birds that are migrating. So maybe when it's being designed, the architectural aspect, they can look at this type of window that is available as we go 6 stories high in that particular area. That's my second thing. And my last and most thing that I really want to draw, and I have to say kudos to Tim Kane and the staff on this one. I was reading the Orbit synopsis and I was quite impressed. And there was a page 7 of page 20 caught my eye. And I think Friday Harbor, if you had a chance to look at page 7 of 20, they've got a phrase in there and it's called achieving a sense of place, i.e. the result is a sense of social commitment. I added cultural acceptance that reinforces inclusiveness, that strengthens neighborhoods, making them more adaptable and help with the social norms of the neighborhood. I was very taken with that. And I thought we could maybe use that phrase that's in the Orbit and bring it to Friday Harbor as it moves forward, because we're only in phase 2. We still have phase 3 to go. And that means respecting private property, speeding, respecting our signs that we have in place, blending in with the community somewhat, and supporting local culture and businesses within the town of Innisfil to make it part of the community of Innisfil, not just retail shops to sell, but actually part of the cultural program. And I will say that when I first saw the project of Friday Harbor, it did have a cultural domain to it. And there was a center to be built at one time next to where the sign is being built. There were 6 acres set aside. I haven't heard much about that lately. However, I think we can implement it with some of the spaces we have currently on the boardwalk that are vacant. So those are my points that have been brought forward from the community. And as we move forward, let's work together and let's have it successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to temper expectations a little bit, the road projects that were that the Deputy Mayor brought up, the 4 road projects, they are in our capital plan right now, but the timing is quite far out. So what the town is talking about doing is they are doing some traffic counts up there this summer. And they will look at the revised transportation master plan update to help inform them on the timing of these projects. So I just don't want people to think, there's going to be shovels in the ground tomorrow putting in sidewalks. And so
I think if they go to the master plan, they'll see the dates that are there, but at least we are working collectively together, you and I and the town and staff, to make enhancements. And as Friday Harbor moves from phase 2 to phase 3, these capital projects will come into place. And it shows that we're working together to make it successful, to make it one. But the concerns of the community really need to be put up to the forefront a little bit more. And we may have to move some capital projects later in another budget process to make sure it works better for the community. And just to finish it off, that the recommendation that we passed tonight, reducing it from 60 kilometers to 50 kilometers an hour, could change Google's concept that it will be now longer to come down around Big Bay Point Road and go in Sunreef than coming in by Friday Harbor Way. So that could help people who use Google to get to Friday Harbor. That could be an asset. But one point that was brought up to me is that I don't know if the people coming out of Friday Harbor are illiterate or maybe their windshields are too dark, but they do not stop coming out of that intersection on weekends. There's going to be an accident and it's not going to be pretty. That's where the gas main got broken. So we need to, and I know in their report, they said there's not much they're going to do regarding the roads in Friday Harbor, but those are concerns of the community that Councillor Payne is not able to be here tonight to bring forward. So I know it takes time, but I think we can work together on it. And I think that's our point tonight.
Deputy Mayor, any other comments or questions on the report? I have one to Ms. Nordstrom, if I could, please. So, you know, from time to time, we have plans coming forward, and quite often it'll be a plan of subdivision. There'll be a block that'll be either commercial or will be a place of worship, or I'll use place of worship because that's probably what happens the most often. And then all the houses get built, and then the developers come in front of us and say, well, nobody's interested in that land, so we're going to turn it into residential. So this is a long way of me saying, how do we keep the hotel a hotel? How do we keep it, you know, how do we keep Friday Harbor coming back a year from now and saying nobody's interested in building a hotel, so we just want to make it residential resort units?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. We've had shared similar concerns with the applicant, who correctly so is the applicant is Friday Harbor Village Inc. And not the Resort Association, to Cheryl's delegation earlier. But we've shared similar concerns with the applicant and have been assured that a hotel operator search is well underway and is important to the future of Friday Harbor, as well as that to maintain that resort functionality. And what's different about Friday Harbor's policy framework or planning framework is that secondary plan and zoning are set up in phasing, to Deputy Mayor's earlier point. And so additional units, while we're agreeing that, you know, one additional building can move forward and take, you know, borrow some of those units from that next phase to allow for that one final building in residential building in phase 2, that a hotel and the conference center and those obligations that remain in phase 2 have to be delivered before additional residential units can be built. And should Friday Harbor, you know, want to, you know, seek relief from that, there would need to be a robust official secondary plan amendment process, and would be back in front of council with that application. But it's very much our desire, and I understand Friday Harbor's desire, to see that hotel operator come on board as part of the phase 2 for Friday Harbor.
Thank you, Ms. Nordstrom. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think there are some very valid points that you just raised, and my concern is future buildings that come along. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that the where the second location for the hotel didn't have a designation in terms of its height, and they got the 6th floor designation because the hotel was going there, and now they're going to be allowed to build a 6-story condo unit there because they had that designation. So if the hotel in its new location doesn't go ahead, is there any way to restrict that it stays, you know, it doesn't become another 6th level condo in that spot? Because it seems that, you know, if they keep moving the hotel around, they can keep getting a 6th floor designation that they've requested. So my thought is, down the road, is there any way to curtail that from happening again? In terms of, if they don't go ahead with the hotel, they still get a 6-story condo to go into that spot. So just kind of along the lines what the mayor was talking about, in terms of how do we protect the residents from further larger and taller buildings on that site.
Ms. Nordstrom?
Yep, through Your Worship, to Councillor Waters, that's a great question. Just first and foremost, there can't be any other residential buildings built without the hotel. As part of that phasing requirement. So to relocate the hotel to another location, it would need to be as part of a concurrent site plan application where a hotel is being constructed. And if a 6-story building height sort of precedent is being sought, it would need to go through a zoning bylaw amendment and come before council to be reviewed on its merits of whether another 6-story location is appropriate. And we'd have to sort of look at that time. But the hotel, if it moves, it has to be constructed. There can't be another residential building built with the hotel being built.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? So we have a mover and a seconder, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Davidson, Councillor Fowler. All those in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next, so I don't think I can move this, but give people just a second to look at this and decide whether or not it's something you could support or second. Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Nickel. I just want to speak to it for a moment. So, you know, some of the organizations that have really struggled through the pandemic that have lost their fundraising abilities, like I'm thinking of Municipal Garden Club and the South Simcoe Theatre, the Guildford Hall, different groups like that aren't considered the Legion aren't considered a charity, but would be able to use some kind of opportunity like this to help get them back on their feet. And it's just asking Minister Downey, the Attorney General, to allow some type of small lottery licensing for non-charities to help them with their fundraising. Any comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. Did this not used to exist before the gaming and lotteries all happened? Because I remember back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of organizations were having lotteries and 2-for-1s and stuff like that that had to be phased out when gambling became legal in Ontario. So are we kind of just going back to what we used to have years ago, decades ago, I guess?
My first experience with this, Deputy Mayor, was when I was a volunteer with the Cookstown Chamber of Commerce back in the 80s, and we wanted to have a 50-50 draw, and we were not allowed because we were not a charity.
So we did have them in the 70s, so then it must have changed the process later. So I think this is a good thing to really help a lot of struggling groups right now. I think it'd be very important to them all. So I support this 100%. Thank you for bringing it forward.
So that we're just going to, the copy, could we also send a copy to South Bruce Peninsula and let them know that we're supporting it as well, since it was their idea in the first place? That would be great. And all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That is carried. So that is it for that. So we go to our RISE recommendation, and that's moved by Councillor Waters and seconded by Deputy Mayor Davidson. All those in favor? That is carried. And a consideration to adopt, oh, sorry, I skipped Councillor. How could we forget? Consideration to adopt, which one am I on? Consideration to adopt recommendations of the Committee of the Whole. Quick, let's vote before the screen changes again. Moved by Councillor Waters and seconded by Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That is carried. And now we will go to the notice of motion. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Your Worship. My seconder would be Councillor Fowler, I believe. So as I thought about bringing this forward, it was after the Victoria Day weekend, and as it has been said here by Ms. Sinclair and others, that the fireworks in our town has escalated to a very serious point. And after that, on that Victoria holiday weekend, we experienced loss of an animal due to it. A cow had got spooked and tried to jump a fence and broke its leg. So we had to euthanize that cow. And then I read in the news about the Adams family who had to put their pet down, their dog, Cosmo. And I looked at the bylaw. I thought this is something has to change. So I came up with this motion. It's really a small step, decreasing the number of days that fireworks are allowed in the town without a permit. Previously, it was 2 days before and 2 days after the holiday, and now it's just the holiday. And we did add a few holidays that some residents celebrate that weren't in the bylaw previously. I don't think that's a huge addition as far as what the changes are meant to accomplish. I thought Mrs. Sinclair deputation today really explained it well, the issues that neighbors are having with these unauthorized fireworks. And I get it. I'm a firework fan as well, but they need to be done properly. And there are these negative effects to our neighbors that are really quite serious. I think the number of comments we got from residents speaks to that as well. I would like to maybe ask bylaw just to answer maybe some of the questions that Ms. Sinclair had about the number of times we've had complaints and how many times we've actually issued a fine with regards to unauthorized fireworks. So maybe if I could just start there and then leave the discussion open for others. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Vickers.
Through you, Your Worship. We've received to date, and my data might be a week old, but 20 complaints have been registered this year. And so we've attended all of them. We have not issued any tickets in regards to fireworks being set off illegally.
Mr. Vickers, can I ask you to expand a little about the right of entry, about how many bylaw officers we have on, and just expand a little bit about what are the challenges to enforcement? What are the challenges to enforcement? Thank you.
It is a challenging bylaw to enforce. We have bylaw officers on the weekends. Their shift ends at 10 p.m. And we usually have 2 officers on the weekends. There might be 1, there might be 3, depending on the weekend. So then you think, okay, we've got 2 people till 10 o'clock. We've got, 70 miles of shoreline, 800 miles of road, a significant area to cover. And so the logistical problem for bylaw staff is commonly when we receive a complaint, the fireworks may already have occurred or they've already started by the time someone gets annoyed. They phone us and then we got to get there. And so just as a comparator, I think our ambulance service, their response time currently is about 15 minutes, just under 15 minutes. And I think the fire department and so Simcoe Police get to properties in around 7 to 10 minutes. And so that's with a dedicated staff being sent to a specific address's front door. And they have a dedicated big team. And so, you know, we have to go and find someone in their backyard, and we really only have authority to go to the front door, and it's dark. And so a lot of times by the time we get there, I mean, a commercial fireworks display might be 20 minutes. So if somebody's setting off fireworks, you know, those little packages they get for $100 or whatever, that might take 5 minutes. So by the time we even get the call, they're most likely have finished. And then we get sent to a street. Like, we think, we don't always know where the property is. Most commonly we don't. And so it's a very challenging bylaw to tag somebody at. So there are logistical challenges. It's not that it can't be done, but logistically it is a challenge. Does that cover it?
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. I saw a couple more hands. Deputy Mayor Davidson and then Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I think what listening to Mr. Vickers makes a lot of sense, and I've heard this told to me by the police or South Simcoe Police or by bylaw. It makes a lot of sense in truth. Maybe with staff in our communications, let's push. I'd love to see this passed tonight. An education, like maybe mail out with the hydro bill or something that here in Innisfil, these are the days that are set aside. And if there is a bylaw, and I think Councillor Van Berkel will agree, maybe our bylaws, when we do catch somebody, the fines that we're charging just aren't enough. And maybe it's time we start really increasing these fines to maybe $1,000, $1,500 to make it. First we educate, but next time you do it, we do find you're paying $1,000 to $1,500, and let's make it tough. So I know that Aurelia and Tiny Township recently have really increased their ticket prices and fines. So maybe it's something we can look at in the future here as well. So I understand the frustration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering, Isis, I'm reading what Councillor Isis has written, and I really don't see, although I'm glad he's been able to add to it, but I really don't see how this is going to change the situation we currently have. I think a lot of people are throwing fireworks, not even on the special days. Like I heard them today, and it's not a special day today, unless somebody's celebrating the longest day of the year. So I'm not too sure what we're proposing here is going to improve the situation. I liked what Ms. Sinclair said. She quoted that Shelburne seemed to have a bylaw that she seemed to like. And so I was wondering, is it worthwhile before we pass this tonight, as like I said, I'm not too sure it's going to make things any better because the enforcement piece is so tough, whether or not we could build some other aspects into it if we were to do some research on what Shelburne has done and what other communities done have to curtail this situation. So I like what I see. I just don't think it's going to be enough to change the attitudes that are out there. And so I'm just wondering whether or not, I've never heard of what Shelburne's done, so it might be worthwhile to do some further investigation before we pass this and then have to come back and change it again. So I'm in favor of the motion. I just thought I would rather see something that was going to really change the situation on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like the motion as well, but I don't think it goes far enough. I think with Ms. Sinclair, one of the points that she brought up about, not allowing to sell fireworks until a week before the holiday is a very valid point in education. And I think that's part of the Shelburne bylaw. Because it's a big problem every weekend. I mean, 11:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, I get phone calls about somebody setting off fireworks. And so I I think, this notice of motion is a good beginning, but it needs to go further. And, I'm fully in support of it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Davidson?
Yeah, I like what Councilor Van Berkel said. So I know that a lot of corner stores sell fireworks for $100, $150 a box. What I don't want to do is stop somebody who's making a living by selling fireworks, that they can't sell them for special permit occasions that we do allow. So I think we have to look at maybe a little bit carefully where we say where they cannot be sold and can be sold. Let's consider that as well, because people do have a right to a small business and just sell fireworks. So let's remember that as well. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Nicol.
Sorry, Worship, just to weigh in on this, I did have a couple of points I wanted to make. This clearly has been a very stressful year and a half for many of us, and there are some that are pushing the envelope and letting off a bit too much steam. I fully understand the frustration from some residents that they're experiencing, and as well as Councillor Icey's rationale. But instead of allowing fireworks on the four specific days right now, and the national recognized days as legally approved in 2017, I have a real concern that we're actually adding additional dates. And I do have concern that we don't exclude anybody else's celebrations of those 4 days. We could be adding dozens of legally permitted events. Online, I've counted over 78 other significant important dates alone that could be otherwise added to make sure we don't exclude anyone. With the limited resources already identified by our bylaw department to enforce any bylaws that we write, and seemingly very limited appetite to raise taxes to add a significant number of other enforcement officers, I truly think we would, either have to ban fireworks altogether in town, or keep the limited number of nationally significant days as the only times for fireworks to be permitted with our residents legally. With fireworks available at just about every corner, there will always be somebody who just can't help themselves to let one off. Just as residents on Lawrence Ave and some of the other notes we saw responded, I think that limiting them to just allowing strictly 3 dates, New Year's Eve, taking away New Year's Day, and retaining just Victoria Day and Canada Day would be a better solution than adding possibly dozens of other dates, which would not relieve the issues that have been raised by residents. I think that it would be better to revise or amend this to prohibit fireworks except for those 3 specific nationally celebrated dates. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just make a couple of comments. So I know that bylaw does go and speak to everyone who sells fireworks and supplies them with information. Is that correct, Mr. Vickers?
To your worship. Yes, that is accurate. Our communications team has developed an information package, which they share with fireworks retailers and ask that information be shared with their patrons.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But having said that, I can tell you, I watch the 6 o'clock news every night, and First Nations liquidation, that's their biggest thing that they sell is fireworks, and other municipalities will too. So even if we ban them from Innisfil, doesn't mean that they're going to be, not here anymore. And to what Councillor Nichols said about, COVID. So all of those great big celebrations, the Friday Harbor, thousands of people go there to watch fireworks. Thousands of people go to Canada's Wonderland. Thousands of people go to downtown Barrie to watch these fireworks displays. All of those people have been displaced and are, bringing it into their backyard. So I'm really hopeful that it will decrease once those large fireworks displays are allowed again. I've been on the website, and I'm going to ask Ms. Sinclair to tell me where on earth you find silent fireworks, because I have not been able to find any. And I also took the opportunity to call a councillor in Shelburne to see if their bylaw works. And unfortunately, it's the same as here. It's a great bylaw, but it's unenforceable. So and it's everywhere, right? There's not a municipality, there's not a councillor I've spoken to anywhere that doesn't have this issue. But I think there's a lot we can do. I think the education thing is huge. So we do go out on social media. The last one I went back and I looked, the last time we talked about fireworks was just before May 24th weekend, explaining the rules, telling everybody be respectful. But I think we could do more. I think we could go out this week, Friday, and say, did you know that we got a bylaw and that if you're not allowed to have fireworks this weekend unless you have a permit, and if you don't, you could get fined. Like, just, I think a lot of people don't understand that we have a bylaw to begin with. So I think that would go a long way. And also, I think I was talking earlier to Dr. Chaperoux, who had an idea about possibly having some kind of an aerial trespass built into it, so that we've heard cases before where people have found casings on their lawn or on the top of their shed or whatever, that would there be a way through a trespass to I'm going to ask Mr. Chaperoux if he could to explain it better than I am. And there he is.
Thank you, Worship. My suggestion was that we do have complaints where fireworks are flown over people's houses, over people's property, and the casings are left there. So as an amendment to our bylaw, we could look at in the future having Trespass to Property Act inclusion there, such that it will be treated as a trespass. Because of aerial rights over people's homes are sacred, and as far as the noise goes, there's the things that we can do, and hopefully with better education we can help curb the problem.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that. So my suggestion to you, Councillor Eisses, but it's totally your decision, would be defer it back to staff to consider some of those other issues and ask I think what's really good about putting it out in the first place is people are talking about it. And that is important, because there's a reason why there's been only 20 complaints in half a year. And that's because you can go on Facebook and say, darn those fireworks. And people do, there's hundreds or if not thousands of complaints on Facebook. But if I hear fireworks here, I can say darn those fireworks, but I couldn't call bylaw and say they're over on such and such a street, because I can hear the bang, but they could be a kilometer away. So it's tricky, but I think it's great to bring this forward, and I think we can put some more meat on these bones, but that's it's up to you, Councillor.
So what I would say is we received, even though there were only 20 complaints filed, as council we received, I think clerks compiled them, and there were 34 pages of emails about this, all of them in the negative that I could tell. So this was meant to be a starting point. Obviously, the narrative, as people had more time to interact with us, it has changed from when I first wrote that, and it became very evident that this motion isn't enough. So I agree that that this could be strengthened. Procedurally, I guess I would need a little bit of guidance on how to do that. If a member of council votes to defer it, as you suggested, or do I need to do that? I think staff has heard a lot of comments about this, and perhaps they can make a report that updates us on how to go forward on this bylaw.
You can check the wording on the screen there and see if that suits your liking, Councillor, and to the seconder. The only
good with it.
I might
that
add
works
is,
for me.
that's great, because it gives the date of when it's coming back, which is important. So it doesn't languish.
I would like to add that I think we can increase our education on the issue without, or like, as this staff is investigating this, just to perhaps give people second thoughts when they want to light them off without a permit.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, do we need that in the motion, or can we?
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you to Councillor Ices, is I think staff has been looking into this issue the last few weeks, and we'll be rolling all of the information we've gathered, and they've been listening to council tonight, and that will come back in a report to council August the 11th, should this motion pass.
Mr. Keel?
Hello, Your Worship. Thank you. Just through you to council, just letting you know that our team was, of course, part of the group that was promoting this to let the public know about this. And we were greatly anticipating tonight just to see what would happen so we could start to inform the public right away. But no matter what, in advance of Canada Day, we will be pushing out some communications, a news release, those kinds of pieces with some strong messaging, likely from our fire chief, about all the concerns that we kind of talked about tonight with fireworks. So absolutely, that is coming for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. And I commend you, Councillor Ices, for bringing this forward, because you're right, it has been a nuisance issue with the town for a long time. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion to refer? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And next is announcements. Is there any announcements from members of council? Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I know that you were invited and we're not able to attend, but I just want to let you know that, or let everybody know that my son Wyatt and I were invited to judge the Cookstown Chamber of Commerce Ferry House contest. We were wandering through Cookstown and saw over 20 different displays. Just amazed at the creativity of our residents in Cookstown. There were just so many unbelievable displays built by both kids and adults alone or alike, and it was just really great to see the creativity and the fun people were having. Going back to it again, people are navigating their way through this pandemic, and it's just great to see the creativity and people having some fun with it. So just unfortunately you weren't able to help out, but glad that you were able to send myself and Wyatt to go do some judging. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Wyatt's getting very, very good at judging haunted houses and Christmas houses, so he's doing very well. Any other announcements? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. This Friday, the St. James United Church is having their annual strawberry supper, and if you didn't pre-register for a wonderful meal, you are out of luck. They were sold out last week. Another example of an annual event surviving and flourishing in these times. So thanks to the people at St. James for keeping that going.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Seeing none, I just want to wish everybody a very happy Canada Day. And also our next meeting is not until August the 11th. This is the first break that this council has had since July of 2019. So I hope everybody enjoys a Zoomless month, and get out and enjoy some fresh air and some sunshine. And we'll see you back August the 11th, unless I promise, unless the sky's falling, not to call a special meeting in July this year.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
All right, so with that, then we'll move for the confirming bylaw, and that will be moved by Deputy Mayor Davidson and seconded by Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That is carried, and adjournment is moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, everybody, for your attention this evening. Thanks for being with us, and happy Canada Day, and we'll see you in a month.
And all to the staff, have a great holiday from us.
Absolutely.
Happy Canada Day, everyone.
Happy